Hey everyone, so this is a private video, so this is just for the patrons of Into the Cryptoverse, so I hope you guys enjoy it. It's meant to accompany the newsletter, the Quantitative Investor, Volume 1, Issue number 4. So if you want to read that, you can, or you can watch this video to try to bring you up to speed on what I'm talking about when I mention dollar cost averaging your buys and dollar cost averaging your sells. So the first thing here is to just look and become acquainted with this graph. And essentially what it is it's just the price of Bitcoin on the primary y-axis, the risk metric on the secondary y-axis. Price is the blue line, which corresponds to the left, the primary axis. Risk is the orange line, which corresponds over here. This is a logarithmic scale. So the price is on a logarithmic scale, the risk is not. If the risk is 0, then historically it's at a low point. The risk is low in a sense. So if it's ever around, say, 0 to 0.1, then we're looking at a fairly low risk level. If it's 0.1 to 0.2, it's also very low. You can see that we don't spend very much time in that risk regime. But when we do, it's good to take advantage of that opportunity. And I think one of the things is, a lot of times when Bitcoin, when the price is crashing, a lot of people will tend to think that, it's going to just keep dropping and dropping, and they don't take advantage of these opportunities. And then before you know it, you've just missed it, and it's gone. And a lot of these moves can even take place, maybe while you're at work or, while you're doing something not involving cryptocurrency, and you maybe missed the move. So the first thing I do is to always have buys lined up at the 200-week and 300-week moving averages. The 200-week is probably around like $5,500, $5,600, somewhere around that point. The 300-week around $3,800 to $3,900. So I always have buys there because I consider those to be very strong supports. And even the last time we went down to the 200-week and we ultimately broke below it, but we were back above it within just a few days. So from the macro level scale, this is still a really good buy for me, even though I bought a lot at the 200 week and I bought some at the 300 week. Despite the fact that I bought some at the 200 week, it still is a good long-term buy, considering that historically speaking, the 200 week is the primary support region. So the thing we've talked about is this idea of dollar cost averaging your buys and dollar cost averaging your sells. And a lot of people do it statically, and that's fine, which means that you're just doing the same amount every month. Whether you're dollar cost averaging 1,000 a month, 10,000, 100,000, whatever it is, as long as you're sticking to a plan, then I think that's good. In traditional markets, there's a lot of evidence, and I mean, it's been proven that doing lump sum is more often than not better than dollar cost averaging. Clearly, that is not always the case. In bear markets, in traditional markets, like the one that we are in right now, I am actually dollar cost averaging as opposed to just doing a lump sum, which is what I normally do. If I come into, say, a large sum of money, when the world's not falling apart, then I just put it into the market. I don't dollar cost average in traditional markets because the evidence, the math shows that it's better not to. But at least during a bear market, when when things are very uncertain, I do tend to dollar cost average just because the uncertainty in where things are headed is just, it's so high, and I think it merits offsetting some of that risk by just continuing to buy for an extended period of time. And I mentioned I was doing that in the traditional markets about a month or two ago. So here, the idea of dollar cost averaging your buys. So we talk about doing it statically, but what about dynamically? So the idea is, if you're dollar cost averaging, say $1,000 a month, and let's say it's 1,000 just to keep it simple, and you're doing that, for the foreseeable future. One idea is to just dollar cost average dynamically. So you would pick your X value, whatever it is. Maybe in order to optimize this, you need to figure out, okay, well, if I'm putting in, say, 300 a month now, then if the risk were to go to, say, 0 to 0.1, then at that point I could maybe put in 1,500, even though my typical buy is only 1,000. But if I put less in up here, then I can afford to put more in down here. And a lot of people get frustrated because they think, well, what about, we're missing out on gains? It could be true, but you could also be accruing interest on the money that you're just letting sit aside. You could put it into decentralized finance. You could maybe even put it into a liquidity pool or something like that and earn a decent percent commission. So you still might benefit from it, and you'll have more purchasing power when the time comes. And this is a macro level thing. I think it's good when you're going into an accumulation phase after a blow off top to follow this approach. And clearly it has been working, since I talked about it. I mean, we've been talking about this method for quite a while now, and we were talking about the 300-week moving average in the chat, and when we got down there, I said the risk was 0.12 and that I was buying, and I know a lot of other people did as well. And you hopefully got in a decent buy at that region. On the other hand, there are people that just think it's going to continue to go lower forever, and then they don't buy. And then what happens is they get overly greedy because they then say, okay, well, I missed the low. It has to go back to that level, so I'm going to just wait. But then they don't even dollar cost average then because they just keep waiting. So the idea is you're doing it on a predetermined interval, okay? Whether it's every week, every 2 weeks, every month, you're doing it on a predetermined interval. The only time I break that rule, there's only one time I really break that rule. It's when we go to the 200-week moving average or below. Then it's just like I'm going in like crazy. I don't really care if I had just dollar cost average the day before. If we're going into the risk regime, down in this region, then it's time to, for me, it's time to say, okay, we're hardly ever in this point. If you go back in time and look at the amount of time we've spent below 0.2, okay, it's just a few months in each cycle. And another thing I'd like to point out, remember this wick here, it's only accounting for daily data. Had we accounted for minute data, this was all the way down into the 0.12 regime, which is similar to this, to what happened before. And I think I think this is also good evidence to show, cycles are probably lengthening, because if they weren't, then we would expect to just keep marching up. But instead we haven't. We capitulated for the second time in the same market cycle. Down to the $3,000 to $4,000 regime. A lot of people get so focused on whether it's the low, it's still higher than the low of $3,100. But at the end of the day, we're still in a bear market until we get above the 20-week moving average and hold it as support. So until that happens, then we're just in a bear market or an accumulation phase. So what I'm doing is I'm continuing to dollar cost average. And one of the things that you need to think about is, and I have a feeling this is happening with a lot of people, because it used to happen to me all the time, is I wouldn't buy, and then I would watch price go up. Okay, and you watch it go up, and then you get so upset with yourself that you didn't buy, and then you wait for it to go back down, but then it never does. But if you just follow the strategy of, I'm going to put this much money in, every Sunday or every month or something, then it just removes the stress. There's really no reason to stress yourself out over it, because at the end of the day, having a plan is likely going to work out better than just going in blind and letting your emotions rule. If you go in thinking that the price has to do something just because it allows you to get your buy-in, then you could continue missing out. But if you continue to just dollar cost average, it doesn't matter what the price does. It doesn't matter what the risk level is. You just dollar cost average that amount for that month or for that week. It just doesn't matter. It becomes completely irrelevant. And ultimately, you want the risk to stay low for as long as you can, because you can continue accumulating. And then once we get up into this region, then you're sowing the profits of what you're reaping the profits of what you sowed in this region. Now, there are people that say, well, Ben, I don't like this idea of cutting it off at 0.5. You can cut it off wherever you want. You could cut it off at 0.9 for all I care. It just, if you can live with the risk associated with that, then that's ultimately, that's on you. The reason why I cut it off at 0.5 is because I want to ensure I take profits on the way up. And additionally, if you just look at our 2019 run, this allows you to take profits when things like this happen and then we come back down. Similarly, in the last cycle, you can see we actually went into this regime several times and then we came back down. So you could be selling and reinvesting those profits. And then the other question is, well, what about taxes? Clearly, if this is going to cause you too much headaches with taxes or you think it's not worth it, then you could always raise these risk levels much higher, but just be willing to live with the risk that it might not work out in your favor if in fact, say, Bitcoin peaks at a value much less than what you think it's going to be, which is what happened in the last market cycle. And this is not just with Bitcoin, it's with a lot of altcoins. People thought that coins were just going to go up forever, their valuations, and then they get stuck holding a bag. And who wants that to happen? Let the dumb money hold the bags. Let the smart money get in when it's time to get in, which is now, the accumulation phase. Smart money gets in now. Okay. Smart money slowly dollar cost averages their way out of the market, as far as I'm concerned. This is what I do. And then when we ultimately break that speculative bubble, when ultimately we come crashing down, we're out of the market. We let dumb money deal with the fact that they bought our bags. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's a zero-sum game. If you're making a lot of money, then someone's losing a lot of money. So this is a huge transfer of wealth thing. It's happened several cycles in the past. It'll probably happen for many cycles to come. So it ultimately boils down to a transfer of wealth from dumb money to smart money. And if you don't have a plan, then you're going to end up letting your emotions rule rather than your just letting the numbers do the talking. So the idea here with buying is, to me, the buying part is relatively easy. You just don't even think about it. You just you check in maybe to my newsletter every week. Let's say you want a dollar cost average every week. You just look, okay, Bitcoin's risk is 0.33. I'm going to put in 2x from whatever x is. I don't even care. I'm going to put in 2x. Then the next week, you see it's a 3. It's between, say, 0.2 and 0.3. All right, I'm going to put in 3x. And you just do that, for months and months and months until you get to whatever your risk level, what your risk tolerance is. And then maybe you start to think, okay, I'm either going to sell or I'm going to stop buying. Now, one of the things we talked about last week in the newsletter was when you stop buying, people get this idea that the FOMO kicks in. They think, well, now I'm missing out on potential gains. But the idea is, if you're dynamically dollar cost averaging your sells, and let's say your risk tolerance is 0.7, so you're willing to buy up to a risk tolerance of 0.7. Now, the thing here is, if you're doing that and you're doing it statically, then maybe it's okay. But if you're doing it dynamically, let's say you're putting in, say, 7x down here, 6x, 5x, 4x, 3x, 2x, and x, then the amount of money you're putting in this region compared to the amount of Bitcoin you already have accumulated throughout years of accumulation and dynamically dollar cost averaging is fairly negligible. And what's the point of raising your risk through the roof, so to speak, just to accumulate a little bit more Bitcoin? What's the point? I need to remind you, there are many other markets out there. Smart money doesn't just stick in one market for their entire lives, and you don't just make a ton of money during a few months and then just sit in your bags for 3 years. No, you sell dynamically or you sell statically, whatever you want to do. And then when the bull market run finishes in crypto, so let's say it peaks out in, say, 2023 or something, then you're ready to, say, move those assets to a different asset class, whether it be index funds or real estate. I mean, ultimately, we're all here, to increase the money we have, to provide a better life for us and our family. And whether that means buying, if it means you're buying a house or paying your mortgage off or whatever it is, ultimately there is an end goal to all of the madness, right? I mean, you either are looking to pay something off or you're looking to accumulate wealth so that you can continue to invest that wealth. So let's imagine 2023 comes, do you just sell everything and then just say, you know what, I'll revisit crypto in 2025 and we'll start doing this again. I think this is silly. I mean, we're only here for a limited amount of time, and you want to continuing to be earning money on your money, letting your money work for you. And so you can. There's other asset classes, and index funds I think are a really good one because they usually tend to go up. So what I will do for me is I will be dollar cost averaging my way out of the market. If we drop back down into the region, the buy region, then I'll reinvest this money back into the market. Um, Potentially, I will, if the risk of Bitcoin is say zero point 0.8 and the risk of Ether is uh, zero point 0.4, then maybe I'll put that into Ether or something. But ultimately speaking, I'm looking to dollar cost average my way out. And then when the speculative bubble hits, I'll take 90% of my profits out. Okay, that goes into the bank, safe and secure. Don't risk your emotions, gambling with the profits you waited years for. It just goes into the bank, and then I'll probably chase a few lots for a couple weeks, just on the off chance that it works. Because I found historically that you can really see a lot of movement during that time in altcoins. And the key there is just to not get overly greedy and to take profits when you can, following a similar risk metric. And this is one of the reasons why I will have the risks up out for other coins when it comes time for it. You can even see, I've published one on XRP. I understand that a lot of people don't like XRP. That's not the point. If and I'm not saying I'll buy XRP or anything, but my point is there will be coins that will have low risk levels that will likely shoot through the roof at some point at the end of the bull run that Bitcoin has. It'll probably happen at some point. On the risk level will be relatively low, and then everyone's going to take their house money that they've made on Bitcoin essentially, and then just throw it at a lot of altcoins. And then these altcoins will go up, and then they'll come down, and they'll likely come down to a higher price than what they were before. But some of them will die forever, and I think a lot of people have seen that even in the current cycle. So consider that. Now, we've talked here about dollar cost averaging your cells. And the way I do it is just Y, 2Y, 3Y, 4Y, and 5Y. If you add all these up, you get 15Y. So 15Y equals the total amount of Bitcoin you have. So if you're selling between, say, 0.5 and 0.6, then you're selling 1/15 of your Bitcoin. If you're selling it between 0.6 and 0.7, then 2/15, 3/15, 4/15, and 5/15. So at the peak, where we're reaching our peak, you're selling 1/3 of your Bitcoin. Okay, so if you can imagine the last market cycle, let's look at what would have happened had you followed this method. You would have sold between, say, let's just say around 0.5 or so. You would have sold here, and it would have corresponded to, so this would have been the risk level here. So if we go up and look at the price, it was around, say, $2,000 or $3,000 or so, maybe $1,000 to $3,000, something like that. You would have sold 1/15 of your Bitcoin at the prior all-time high, basically. Okay. Remember, you would have had many opportunities to sell it if you sell it when it gets above 0.5 and then rebuy it when it comes back down, and it even came back down to below 0.4. So that's one option. And some people ask me, well, where do you sell it in here? What I usually do is I just when it gets above 0.5, I then just put the stop loss in. So I'll say, okay, if it gets to this level, then I'll sell. If the price continues to go up, then I'll just raise the stop loss. Okay. And then eventually the risk will come back down, and then the stop loss will get triggered, and then it'll sell. But that's a way of just maximizing where I sell within each risk band. So you can see it would have happened 3 times. I would have sold 1/15 at around $1,000 to $2,000. Then up here it would have been around. So just going up, it would have been around, say, $3,000 to $5,000. Would have been selling, say, 2/15, or three to four, something like that. Between 0.7 and 0.8, it would have been almost $10,000, something like that, maybe 8 to 9. I don't know exactly, looking at the graph without looking, numerically speaking. Say between 0.8 and 0.9, we would have been looking close to, say, $10,000, and then finally the last bit would have been selling between, say, $15,000 and $20,000. So ultimately, it would have been, say, selling 1/3 of the Bitcoin at or near the peak, selling 4/15 of the Bitcoin at $10,000. I mean, looking back on it, it seems like, you probably would have done better doing this method than just holding on and trying to time the top. Because at least this method, at least it ensures you're taking profits. okay, holding forever and just assuming it's going to go up can cause you not to, because what happens is you'll see something like this where the price will go up and then it'll see a 30% retracement, and then maybe you think, okay, well maybe that was the peak and now we're coming down, and then you just say, okay, I'm going to just capitulate. I lost my chance to sell on the way up. I'm just going to sell everything, and then you watch it go back up. Because timing the top is a fool's game. You don't try to time the top. Just follow some strategy, whether it's this one or a different one, and just stick to it. So let's move on. So I want to show this because this is something I made, and it's basically like a validation of the risk model. So I put in some dummy price data that takes us out for several years, out to say 2020, the end of 2022, maybe it's the beginning of 2023. I can't really tell exactly where it is. But it's basically something that I think could theoretically happen. Now, I made this a while ago, so it doesn't necessarily account for maybe some of the price action in the last month or so. But more or less, you can see that if we do see this lengthening cycle that looks something like this, so you can see the first one kind of is concave up like that, the second one is a bit wider, and then the third one will be even wider. Then you can see that the risk metric will slowly trend upwards, and then at some point we'll see this new blow off top peak. And then from here, we'll probably retrace some. Generally, what I think is going to happen is I think it'll peak somewhere between $100,000 to $150,000. Clearly, I could be wrong. Maybe it'll peak before 90 or before 100,000. Maybe it'll go to 200,000. But you want to take profits on the way up. And what would that look like? So if price were to do something like this, then imagine selling at, say, a risk of 0.55. Okay, so maybe we hit it sometime in 2021, then you're selling it for around $20,000. Okay, so you'd be selling 1/15 at around $20,000. Then you would be selling, let's say, at 0.65 or so. Then you'd be selling that at around, let's see, so this would be, say, 10,020. So maybe just over $20,000, $20,000 to $30,000. Something like that, and so on and so forth. I mean, we can continue to go up the curve. I mean, 0.75. This is where the risk would be, right here. Go up to the price corresponding to it. So 0.75 right here. The price is probably $50,000 or so, and so on and so forth. I mean, at 0.85. We're looking at a price of around $100,000, and then higher at 0.95 would probably correspond to a price over $100,000. Okay, so ultimately, maybe you're selling 1/3 of your Bitcoin for $120,000, 4/15 of your Bitcoin for $100,000, 1/3 of your Bitcoin for $60,000. I mean, these are all amazing profits if you're buying it at $7,000. Like, look at it in the long term. Don't focus on where the peak might be, but just be happy that you saw a 10x or be happy that you saw a 20x, and take those profits, and then either do what you want to do with them in terms of maybe buying a house or reinvesting. Remember, there's many other markets out there. I think we're getting into an exciting time of the current market cycle with cryptocurrency, because I think that while 2020 is an accumulation year, at least the 2017 to present day is behind us, because we know that's just been a bear market. But at least looking forward for the next 3 years, things do seem to be a lot more optimistic than they were in 2018. So I think there are good things to come. I think you need to have a plan. I think you need to stick to that plan, whether it's the one I've outlined or whether it's a different one. Here I'm just going to show the typical color-coded graph. So you can imagine something like this happening, having a blow-off peak, and then it coming back down. Ultimately, I think the price will probably retrace back to around, say, $30,000 to $40,000 or so, somewhere in that ballpark, before rebounding maybe back to 70, 80, and then the next cycle will probably take us to $300,000 to $500,000, something like that. This is long term. So I hope this video has been informative. I hope it's outlined, cleared up any questions. Remember, I always have buys at the 200 and 300 week moving average, because I think it's, while some people say, well, I wish I had that money doing something else, my argument back is, well, there's a risk associated with not having buys there as well. And if we don't hit it again, then fine. I've made that choice. I took that risk on, and I can live with it. I would not be able to live with going to sleep one night and seeing that the price went down to the 200-week moving average and then bounced back up to $6,500 before I woke up. That's something I wouldn't want to live with, because I know that the 200-week moving average is a huge critical level of support, and it's worth, to me, taking on the risk by letting the funds sit there and do their thing. So I hope this is informative. Thanks for supporting the channel, and I hope to make more videos in the months to come, the weeks to come. Let me know if you guys like seeing private videos over the newsletter. Maybe some of you would just prefer private videos instead of getting a newsletter. I like putting the newsletters out because I think there's a lot of people that like to read the content and see it on paper rather than watch a long video. But I'm certainly not against changing some aspects of things as we go through the cycle, because I want to cater to whatever you guys want. If you want just the newsletters, we'll just do that. If you want just the videos, then I'll probably meet you in between and say we'll still do some newsletters and we'll do videos. But I'm not going to completely, just get rid of one. So let me know what you guys think about it in the comments, so I can at least read, do you prefer the videos or do you prefer the newsletters? And ultimately, I'll still do the newsletters, but I just want to know if you'd like to see more videos. So that'll wrap it up. I will see you guys next time. Bye.